I was 23 when I gave up my name. Not literally, but piece by piece I gave it away. To love. To motherhood. To responsibility. I remember the day I met him. He had a way of making you feel like the sun rose just for you. I was young, full of dreams, little things. I wanted to travel. To write. To open a bookstore where the air smelled like paper and cinnamon tea. But that all changed with one sentence. I need you. And I said yes. Because that's what good women do. Right? We got married in the spring. I remember the tulips and the tightness in my mother's smile. She hugged me longer than usual like she knew what was coming. She didn't say it out loud, but her eyes whispered, "Don't forget who you are." I did anyway. It started small. I quit my job. Just until the baby came. I stopped writing. Just until things settled. I stopped buying books, makeup, and little luxuries that once made me feel like me. Soon, I was the last person on my list. At 28, I was a mother. At 32, a caregiver. At 35, I was everything to everyone. Except myself. And people praised me for it. She's so strong. She does it all. What would we do without her? They meant well. But no one ever asked me if I was tired. If I missed the woman I used to be. If I still had dreams buried beneath the laundry and the late-night dishes. And if they had asked, I wouldn't have known how to answer. Because when you spend your whole life giving, you forget what it feels like to want. In my 40s, I became invisible. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. The kind of invisibility that doesn't come from age, but from neglect. Neglecting myself. My birthday came and went 1 year. No calls. No cake. I stood in the kitchen and whispered, "Happy birthday," to myself. Then I made dinner. For everyone else. That's when it hit me. This wasn't sacrifice. This was erasure. I had erased myself. Every time I said, "I'm fine," when I wasn't. Every time I said, "Don't worry about me," and meant it. Every time I put someone else first, even when I was breaking. That's how it happens. Not all at once. But over time, you disappear. You stop laughing at your favorite movies. You stop dressing up just because. You stop dreaming. And slowly, quietly, you forget who you were. And the cruelest part? No one notices. Not even you. Not until something breaks. And even then, you're too afraid to pick up the pieces. Because somewhere along the way, you started to believe that you don't deserve to be whole. But here's the truth I wish someone had told me. You can give and still keep parts of yourself. You can love without losing your name. You can be there for others without disappearing. But I didn't know that back then. Back then, I was just a girl trying to be everything. To everyone. At the cost of herself. The strange thing about losing yourself is that no one ever tells you it's happening. There's no announcement. No sirens. No warning signs. Just quiet moments, stacking up, one by one. You stop ordering your favorite coffee, because it's too expensive. You stop buying that dress you loved, because, where would I wear it? You stop speaking up when you're interrupted, because, it's not worth the trouble. At first it feels like compromise. Then it becomes habit. Then it becomes identity. By the time I hit my late 40s, I wasn't living. I was managing. Managing schedules. Managing meals. Managing emotions. Not mine, but everyone else's. My husband had become a quiet stranger. The kids were growing, pulling away, as they should. But I was shrinking. Not physically. Spiritually. The house echoed with silence, even when it was full. And in that silence, I realized something heartbreaking. No one really saw me. Not the woman. Not the soul. Just the function. I was a role, not a person. They saw the dinner on the table, but not the hands that trembled while chopping onions. They saw clean laundry, but not the woman who folded it at midnight, alone, wondering when she last felt joy. I tried to reach out once. I told my husband I felt empty. He looked at me, Confused. He said, "But you're always so strong." Strong. That word again. Used like a compliment, but felt like a chain. You see, when you're labeled strong, people assume you don't need comfort. That you don't cry. That you don't break. But I did. Often. Quietly. In bathrooms. In laundry rooms. In the car, parked in the driveway for just a few extra minutes of silence. It became easier to hide than to explain. Because how do you explain a kind of sadness that has no name? A sadness that doesn't scream, but lingers like a fog? I stopped asking for things. Stopped expecting. Stopped hoping. And somewhere in that numbness, I forgot how to feel anything at all. People called me selfless. I smiled and nodded. But inside, I was screaming. Because selfless sounds noble. But sometimes, it just means you have nothing left to give yourself. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of waiting. Tired of being needed, but never known. And so, I floated through my 50s in a haze. Waking up, doing what was expected, going to bed. Rinse. Repeat. Fade. Until one ordinary morning, I looked in the mirror and whispered a question that stopped me cold. Where did you go? I didn't have an answer. Because I had been gone for years. And no one noticed. Not even me. I didn't plan to break. No one ever does. But the truth is, you can only carry so much before something gives way. It was a Tuesday. Rain tapping at the window like it had something to say. I was folding laundry. Again. A never-ending cycle of socks and shirts and silence. Then my daughter called. Not to ask how I was. Not to talk. But to drop off the grandkids. Again. She didn't even ask. She just told me. Because that's who I was now. The dependable one. The backup plan. The always available solution. And I said yes like always. But when the call ended, I just stood there. Frozen. Staring at a pair of socks I didn't even remember washing. Something inside me snapped. Not loudly. But sharply. Like a thread finally pulled too tight. I dropped the laundry basket. And I cried. Not the polite kind of crying. Not the silent tears that you wipe away quickly so no one sees. No. This was years of swallowed pain. Decades of unmet needs. A lifetime of being everything and nothing. All at once. I wept like a woman who hadn't been held in a long time. Like someone who had been brave for too long. Like someone who forgot that her own heart needed tending. And in the middle of that storm, a thought hit me. This is not the life I wanted. Not the life I dreamed of as a girl. Not the life I imagined in those early years of marriage. Not the life I deserved. I had given away every piece of myself and called it love. But love isn't supposed to erase you. It's supposed to hold you. To see you. To nourish you. But somewhere along the line, I confused sacrifice with worth. I believed I had to earn my place by being useful. By doing. By fixing. By showing up even when I was falling apart. That night, I sat alone in the dark. No TV. No music. Just me. For the first time in years, I asked a question I had avoided. If no one needed me tomorrow, who would I be? And the silence that followed was terrifying. Because I didn't know. I had built my identity around everyone else. Their needs. Their schedules. Their happiness. I knew their favorite meals. Their routines. Their moods. But mine? I had no idea what I even liked anymore. I couldn't remember the last time I did something just for myself. Not to please. Not to serve. Just to feel alive. And that realization cracked something open. Not in a destructive way. But in a healing way. Because before you can rebuild, you have to break. You have to see the truth. Name the ache. Sit in the silence and say, this is not enough anymore. And it's terrifying. Because when your whole life has been about others, choosing yourself feels like betrayal. But it isn't. It's bravery. I wish I could say that everything changed overnight. That I stood up the next day and became a new woman. But healing doesn't work like that. It's slow, messy, uncomfortable. And it begins with one small whisper. I matter too. That night was the first time I whispered it. To myself. In the dark. With puffy eyes and a pillow soaked with tears. And for the first time in decades, I felt something stir. Not joy. Not peace. But possibility. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't too old to rediscover myself. Not too late to matter. Not too far gone to come back home. To me. It didn't happen all at once. There was no thunderclap. No dramatic movie moment. Just a quiet shift, like the first light of morning brushing against a dark room. I started small. One morning, I made myself a cup of tea. Not because someone else wanted it, but because I did. I sat by the window and didn't multitask. No laundry. No emails. Just me. Breathing. Sipping. Watching the world go by. And that one small act felt rebellious. Because after years of putting everyone first, doing something just for me felt like reclaiming stolen territory. So I did another thing. I opened an old sketchbook from a box in the attic. It was dusty, forgotten. Much like me. But the pages still held traces of a girl who used to dream in color. A girl who used to imagine, to create, to play. I picked up a pencil and drew. Not perfectly. Not even well. But I felt something stir. It was faint, like hearing your name whispered from far away. But it was there. A memory of who I used to be. Before the roles, before the routines, before the exhaustion. That became my ritual. Each morning, I did one thing just for me. Not for approval. Not for results. Just for joy. It was awkward at first. Guilt clung to me like a second skin. But each time I chose myself, that guilt faded a little more. And in its place came peace. I stopped apologizing for resting. Stopped explaining myself. Stopped trying to earn love like it was a paycheck. I started speaking up. Started saying no without feeling cruel. Started saying yes to things that lit me up, even if they made no sense to anyone else. I danced again. In my kitchen. Alone. To songs from the 70s that made me feel 17 again. I wore red lipstick. I bought flowers for myself. I relearned how to laugh. Not politely, but freely. And slowly, people noticed. My daughter looked at me one day and said, "Mom, you seem different. Lighter." I smiled. Because I was. I wasn't weighed down by invisible expectations anymore. I wasn't chasing approval. I was living. Fully. Finally. You see, we think reinvention belongs to the young. That purpose has an expiration date. That once we reach a certain age, we're meant to fade into the background. Quiet, content, invisible. But that's a lie. We don't become invisible with age. We become invisible when we stop seeing ourselves. The truth? You are allowed to begin again at any age. You are allowed to rewrite your story. You are allowed to take up space. And no, it's not selfish. It's sacred. Because when you come back to life, you don't just heal yourself. You teach others, your children, your grandchildren, what it looks like to truly live. Not just survive. Not just serve. But live. Fully. Bravely. Honestly. So if you're listening right now, and you feel like you've disappeared, please hear me. It is not too late. You are not too far gone. You don't need permission. You just need to whisper, "I'm still here." And take one small step toward yourself. That's how it starts. That's how you come back to life. If this story stirred something in you, if you saw yourself in the quiet moments, the aching truths, or the whispered hope, then know this. You are not alone. There's a whole world of us, women and men over 60, who are still growing, still healing, still coming back to life. And this channel? It's for you. For your stories. Your strength. Your second chances. So if this touched your heart, take a moment to like this video. Not for numbers. but to help this message reach someone else who needs it tonight. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we're building a space here where age is honored and wisdom speaks louder than noise. And I'd love to hear from you. In the comments, share one thing you're doing just for yourself. A small joy, a quiet rebellion, a step toward coming back to you. Let's light the path for one another. One voice, one story, one brave heartbeat at a time.